Now, the next thing is there are limitations on the Advanced Healthcare Directive. So, in particular, if there is emergency treatment that's required and you can't find the person who's got the substitute decision-making authority, then the healthcare system can make decisions that have to be made if there's any delay in getting consent, because they have to act on a timely basis, sometimes for medical reasons, and they can't wait, because otherwise the decision may no longer be effective. It's also true with respect to involuntary psychiatric treatment. So if under the Mental Health Care and Treatment Act, the person involved is committed to a psychiatric facility, which again happens from time to time because of some mental issues that are going on, and they're certified by 2 doctors, then the Advanced Healthcare Directive no longer applies. And at that point, the people in authority under the Mental Health Care and Treatment Act will have the right to make decisions. You can have a patient representative under the appropriate legislation, and that person can monitor your treatment and consult with the psychiatrists or other doctors who are dealing with you while you're involuntarily detained. And you have to understand that this will be a very, very unusual situation. Somebody having to have really a psychotic episode whereby they are a danger to themselves or others before they would be in that kind of situation. But if they're in that situation, then the Advanced Healthcare Directive doesn't apply. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about financial matters, and this is not legal so much as practical. You know, it's important, again, as people are undergoing their disease journey with an Alzheimer's like dementia kind of disease, that you have a look at what you have, consider while you're still able what decisions you want to make. Do you want to keep bank accounts? Do you want to change bank accounts? Do you want to have joint bank accounts? Do you want to continue having credit cards? Because here's one of the problems with credit cards. Once somebody has your credit card and you don't necessarily know what's going on with it, or don't have capacity to follow it, somebody can take advantage of that individual. And credit cards are so easy to use, identification is rarely asked for, that your financial health, without you even knowing it and never having the opportunity to know it, can be affected if somebody gets control of that, or your checkbook. So it's important to consider what you need, and only to perhaps have in place what you need while you need it. And again, there are going to be transitional issues, because you're going to want it want that capacity to make financial purchases and pay bills and so on and so forth while you have capacity. But as you come closer to the point of not having capacity, then we certainly encourage people to at least limit what they have and limit access to what they have to those that are trusted individuals in their family or advisors. Same is true of insurance policies, making sure you understand what you have in terms of insurance. So again, most of these people know what you have. And again, if there is an insurance benefit that can be obtained, to have that. If in terms of your car, the question becomes whether you want to have a car, or whether, and therefore you need to have insurance for that. As long as you have it, of course, you have to have a car insurance policy. And you have to understand who's covered under the policy, so that again, somebody who's not driving your vehicle who is not properly covered, because you might not be able to drive anymore. I'll come to that in a moment. So marshalling, putting together all the information you can get and putting it in one place and considering what you need, these are all things you should do in consultation with family members, with your accountant, with tax preparers, with lawyers, and so on and so forth, or some combination of all of that, just to ensure you're not put unnecessarily at risk by not having taken care of things before you're no longer able to make those decisions. And again, it's fine to say you have an enduring power of attorney, but if somebody gets hold of something that allows them access to your funds, then you can put a risk and you never get the estate, your family may never get that money back. So it's a question really of potential for fraudulent or negligent conduct, which is against the best interest of your family. Pensions are another thing, and RRSPs, again, with respect to RRSPs, make sure there's a beneficiary. With respect to pensions, pensions have different rules. And it's important that survivors or people who may be with you while the disease journey is going on understand what it is you're entitled to get from the pension plan, both while you're alive and after you die. So again, putting that information together and reviewing it is important. I mentioned driving, and driving, in my experience, is one of the most difficult issues as people who have Alzheimer's and dementia and sometimes physical ailments deal with, because we are all so dependent on driving. Going to the grocery store, going to the bank, going to work, whatever it happens to be, driving is pretty important on a practical level. And it's pretty important, sort of in terms of your happiness. If you are used to being able to drive and suddenly you don't have that ability anymore. And there is a conflict, I guess, between sort of that individual need to do what you have always done, have the ability to get around you've always done, not to be confined in a way that you would be if you don't have the capacity to drive a car. And then the issue of safety to yourself and to others. And certainly in what we do, we see a lot of people who are in car accidents, and it's uncanny how often it is that it's either somebody who is very young who causes an accident, or somebody who's very old and has a limited grip perhaps on driving for both physical and sometimes mental reasons. And that can cause great harm to other people. So there's a balance to be achieved there. And you probably are aware that as somebody is being diagnosed with dementia, then the doctor is under a legal obligation to consider whether that person ought to have their driver's license reviewed. And if the medical examination that takes place in the doctor's office reveals that there's some concern about that, then there would have to be a letter sent to the Register of Motor Vehicles asking that there be a review done and recommending perhaps either a limitation on driving or alternatively a complete revocation of a driving license. And that can be quite a shock to an individual or a family. I have found that doctors are usually pretty good about it in terms of exercising judgment to limit at first, and then later to take the license away altogether when things are deteriorating. But it can be a difficulty for individuals to accept that has to happen. And one of the other things, and this is not legal but purely practical, that happens is sometimes people will decline to go to the doctors because they're afraid the doctor is going to take away their license. And this happens in real life. But I think it's incumbent upon everybody who's a caregiver to monitor that as well. And if you think that the person for whom you are caring, or a family member who you are aware of their state at a given point in time, if you are concerned that they should not be driving, then you should certainly encourage the doctor's visit to allow a doctor to assess that. And in the worst case scenario, you may have to report it yourself, just as a matter of safety for everybody. And because the consequences of something, of an accident happening because of somebody's unawareness or inability to drive properly are potentially staggering, both from a financial and emotional point of view for whoever the victims may be of an accident. So it's important to consider that the whole driving thing. But I tell you, I know for me, driving is so important to me that it's very difficult for me to have my driver's license taken away, though I understand it might have to happen at some point in time. But I'm just trying to say that, there's this natural human impulse to want to continue. Sometimes it's just not appropriate.